Hi, Sean.
Yeah, okay.
Hello.
Oh, I go, all right, I'll be right down.
She was doing. There's no place here. So we'll use it for the
Anyway. Now it's just a time.
All right, we'll go ahead and get going. So we have some more folks than usual here in the audience. Because as some of you know, the climate action team, waterfront committee and select board had a joint workshop together. And I suggested as one of the next steps that we, as part of the comp plan process, we do a workshop that would include climate and waterfront together. That would help get climate team some of the answers they need in terms of grants and that kind of thing, and then waterfront in terms of feedback about plans that they'd like the public to see, so. So in terms of tonight, I know where, Sean was on Zoom, but he went away, so I don't know if we'll have him back. But, Emily is here, so that we can talk a little bit more about how the workshops might work, so we wanna do that, I wanted to talk about that one, and then an education one, specifically tonight, with the education one hopefully getting scheduled in the next few weeks. And we can talk about dates for others too, but, but first, I just wanted to check in on the survey, and I know you've got some edits, but, if you, I don't know if you just wanna send them to me, or
I
Were
could do
there-
that, I can track them, I just did them in pencil because I wasn't sure you wanted me to, can I track in the form you sent? I'm not
no,
sure.
it's a PDF.
Yeah, So either we could meet, sometime for 15 minutes and you can look at what I was saying.
Okay,
It's usually it's gonna, it would take too long to like, I love them right now.
Okay.
Everybody.
that's fine. Yeah, we can catch up. Did anybody else have any issues?
No, I took the survey right off, and I gave you my feedback, just a couple, some minor things, yeah.
And then Steve had taken it and there was one place where it said where instead of what, or the other way around. So I fixed that on the last, it was one of the last questions in the second.
Where do you want Wisconsin to look?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So I fixed that one.
The one that I got, and it wasn't all the questions, there were a few questions that I felt could have more than one option, and I struggled with that, I think you mentioned that too.
Yeah,
And then at the end of the survey, there were some questions that you could like list in order,
Mhm.
what your preferences
and I
would be.
know that makes it harder to collect
It does.
survey answers, but I had that same frustration that, in that first group of questions, I thought, no, I don't have one thing, I actually have like two or
Yeah.
three.
Yeah, it was hard to pick.
And so
Was it on ones that,
like 1, 2, 3 even. The third one was
well,
not
but
as
that's,
troublesome because it says, what is the most important?
Right.
1 and 2, what do you like most about Wisconsin? I would be hard pressed to put one thing. I don't feel that way. So I don't know whether it would go under other.
yeah, I think the problem is we just didn't want. It's not very helpful if people list all of them.
Yeah.
We want the actual preferences.
Or even the top 2, or, it just seems it seemed unnatural to me to pick one thing. And so I was thinking other people would have that same feeling of, this is crazy, I can't. I'm not gonna do this, because there's not one thing that I care about. But
Do you feel like people would take advantage of the other and just put that then?
we could specify that, I think we could say that, otherwise. I think they're still, they will still feel they're only supposed to choose one thing. It doesn't feel like the opportunity for me to represent how I feel about the town, but. You can overrule me, I mean, if other people don't feel that way.
No, I
That's
do,
fine.
and I don't think other would cover it, because then you still don't know what.
So you're saying you'd rather have it say, check off
Or even,
what you like most?
I think, well, that's a possibility, I know that. Taking the results from these surveys can be tricky when there are multiple answers.
Yeah.
So I don't wanna make it hell for those of us who are doing that, but I just wanna give people the opportunity to really express what they think. Yeah, maybe you could either do, the top 2 or 3, or you could do check those that you could care most about.
I feel like you probably have to do,
One or the other.
check them rather than, because then I think you'd have someone still say, well, there are 3 reasons that I.
Yeah, right, yeah,
Yeah.
it sort of invites that,
Yeah,
yeah.
so I think it might be better if we did, just check off.
Choose the aspects of the town most important to you, or something like that.
Yeah,
Um,
okay, so we can alter that on the ones, yeah, it's the first
Is it
2.
just those first 2,
Yeah.
I think, number 4.
Yeah, 1 through 4. Okay.
And, yeah, and I was just gonna say, I would love in that question one.
She did have, yes, that was fine, but that makes it hard for you, ranking them, you're saying.
No, I think that actually would be better.
Cause that's what I
'Cause
felt,
then
when
you
I got
have-
to the end of the survey, I was like, oh, that would have been perfect to have that.
At the
At
beginning.
the beginning with those first few questions that, then you can put in order.
I think from a data perspective, that would be more helpful.
Okay.
Okay, great, that's,
So if that works for,
yeah, I
You
think
in
that
terms of how
satisfies the
you see
need
it.
to express the multiple factors and.
Okay.
People's association with the town.
okay, So I may need to make a copy of this, cause it doesn't allow you to change the type of answer after. No, but you can make a whole copy of the whole thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Any others besides what you're gonna tell me later?
No.
Any other like major?
I'm trying to think if there are any that, you know, like Sherry or that anyone should have input in. I think I wrote to you that I feel like in the question 1, there should be rural setting. I was looking at Bath's plan and thinking how urban it is. And I was, you know, some people would choose to live in a town with a rural setting. I'm one of them. But, so I felt like that should be an option. The equal to small town feel and historic character. I don't think you need both historic character and history. I think historic character incorporates history.
Okay.
But the other things, yeah, I don't think that there's anything controversial in my scribbles.
Okay. Just writing this down.
The only other thing, Sarah, in chapter 13, the public services. I had made a scribble note before I realized I couldn't go back in to look more carefully. I think you can pick more than one option in question 13.
You can.
But that means I could choose dissatisfied and satisfied in the same line.
There isn't a different way to roll.
There's no way, so that doesn't.
Do it.
So how can we even include that? Because someone could go through and choose the exact conflicting choice options.
Right, but I'm hoping they'll read the directions at the top that say, do that and then do the spend more money or stay the same or whatever.
Yeah, okay, you probably have more faith in humankind than I. Okay,
I mean, I'm hoping anyway.
yeah,
Because I think
it stuck out to me.
it's not perfect, but.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, it stuck out when I was thinking, wait a minute, I've only got one choice in the questions, and then I've got conflicting choices when I get to number 13, but now that we've resolved those first ones, I think people will be smart.
I also think it's, a lot easier, the public services question on the computer, like the way it's laid out on your screen.
Interesting, okay.
Like, I think people taking it on a computer will be less likely to have conflicting answers,
Okay.
because it's laid out horizontally rather than vertically on your phone.
Yeah, okay, good.
So.
All right, that's good.
Okay, great. Alrighty. Okay, so in terms of workshops, so I wondered, Emily, if you could, just give a little summary of some of the stuff we've talked about in terms of like format of getting people up and out of their seats and activities that we could do, that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So Sarah and I met last week or a week and a half ago now and talked about, kind of general ideas for possible, public engagement, including, workshops. And so one of the things we talked about is rather than it being just a forum where we say, okay, tell us what you think on this topic, whether it's, transportation or education or public facilities. Rather, we want to try and get meaningful but also measurable feedback. And so one of the things Sarah and I talked about was making the workshops more interactive. So having people get up out of their seats, be able to provide, feedback in kind of fun, interactive ways, but it also then provides us with a measurement in order to, rather than only hear what people are saying and try and translate that into something and how we interpret it, but also then having feedback that is quantifiable. So a couple of ideas kind of came to mind, and actually I had another one pop up when, Anne, you were talking about questions 1 through 4, asking like, what if people have multiple options? And so one of the things I thought of was, if we had two maps of the town, like just Google Earth aerials, pretty big, people would get stickers, and one would be, go put stickers on the places in town or the things in town that you like. So people may put, stickers in the downtown, the waterfront, the school, the municipal building, a scenic vista. Then with the second map would be, places that could be improved. Same thing, stickers. So you then have these 2 maps showing these areas, and it's, again, something fun for people to get up interact with one another, start a dialogue with one another. A similar idea is one that Sarah and I talked about, is having, you know, like the big sticky sheets with some predetermined questions that are kind of thought provoking, but also allow people to, you know, have a reaction to, and they would get, I always call it like the red light game. So they would get stickers that are red, yellow, and green. And if they agree with the question or the statement, you put a green. If you have hesitation about it, you put a yellow. If you were fully against it, you put red. And so that again opens up a dialogue, because when you see the results on the giant Post-it, and it's gonna tell you, okay, whatever this statement is, you know, let's use like maintaining historic character as one. If it's all green and maybe 2 yellows and 2 reds, you know, we can say if those people that want to share, that put red or yellow, can share like what their hesitation or concerns are. And then also those people that put green, you know, why did you put green if you're willing to share? So it allows people to respond without feeling like, they gives them some anonymity if they would prefer to, you know, respond to things and participate without necessarily feeling like they need to defend their position. And have people, a lot of people kind of start this dialogue. And like I said, it also gets people out of their seats. Another example I've seen and have done in the past, especially with kind of like future land use chapters, is you get a bunch of like the pretzel containers, empty them, so we're gonna be eating a lot of pretzels. But we make things called, basically monopoly money, we would call it planning bucks, and so everyone in the audience gets like $500 in planning bucks to spend, and it's broken down into different denominations, and so then each pretzel box is, you know, transportation, public facilities, education, natural resources, climate change, and people actually go up and say, okay, you know, if you were the ones making the decision on where the town should invest money over the next 10 or 20 years, which buckets would you put it in? And they have the opportunity to go in there and put, you know, spend their $500, they can put it all in one bucket if they want, or spread it out. And then at the end, you know, you have someone from the comp plan committee, as we're, you know, kind of going over results on other things, we quickly tally up what the cost, you know, spending is. And then you can see, you know, again, from a collaborative and collective approach, most people put their money in the waterfront or education, whatever the respondents may be. So, you know, and then you can start that again, broader conversation of, okay, we have $5,000 in, you know, climate goals. Let's talk a little bit about that. What exactly are you envisioning, you know, that looks like? And so it's a way to start a dialogue, but then you also have, a measurable result that is somewhat objective, because, you know, participants are doing it without feeling necessarily an influence from someone else. So just a thought, in terms of like kind of general fun activities that can be done.
Those are great thoughts.
Because we had talked about, you could do the red light one, like with slips of paper where you just raise your hand, but we were thinking some people will want to say what they feel, and others would rather make their opinion known, but not in front of everyone.
Yeah, I think that's really important too. I mean, some people feel at ease, obviously, all of you do, sitting in front of people, but you know, other people, some people might be their first time they've even come to participate in town politics, and we want them to feel comfortable, you know? I think that's great. I think that's all jar thing is, I mean, that is very clear.
It is, and it works well. I think people get excited about it, because, you know, you have this planning box in your hand, and they're kind of, you know, we make them, you know, different denominations, different colored paper, and people then feel like, okay, you know, I do have a voice in terms of spending, you know, in the town, and it's not just at a budget committee meeting, but talking about where we think future spending should go.
Yeah.
And then I think it's helpful to the town as they're then making spending decisions in the future, because you have this, again, quantifiable response as part of your outreach and engagement process with your comprehensive plan.
Yeah, I know, I can't, Sherry, were you're too young, I think that, there was a really successful, public input session in the last comp plan called www. It's called Where Do You Want What in Wisconsin? I think 75 people came. It was incredible, it was at the high school, and we did big maps.
Mhm.
And I'll look back at, one thing, I love that idea of putting stickers on, I think we did that, I'm trying to think, I feel like there were there were categories of questions.
Mhm.
And I would like to look back and see what those were. For instance, I'm really interested in the Route One corridor, but I wouldn't necessarily put a sticker there for, scenic quality or whatever. And someone who might be interested in economic development might, I don't know. So I think structuring that a little bit is important, but people seem to love putting stickers on maps.
Right, and there's of course, because we're in the age of social media, I've actually pulled it up, so there's now a, company that does this essentially
Oh,
for you.
wow.
It's called Social Pinpoint,
Okay.
and it's a little hard to see, but I can share with you the link, when we're done. And this was something that Damascotta used, so they're close to getting their comp plan ready to go to town meeting and share the final project with the public. But they did something similar, they did a survey, a traditional kind of Survey Monkey, but then they also used a site called Social Pinpoint. If you just Google Damascotta Social Pinpoint, it'll come right up.
Okay.
And so it creates the map of the town, and then it allows the user to fill in, and there's different things. So there's one that's a yellow light bulb, and it's called Big Ideas and Suggestions. So if it's something large, like the economic development idea, or Route One corridor development, like something large that you can't just click on, one specific location in town,
Yeah.
that adds in. Then there's, a thumbs up, it kind of looks like the Facebook thumbs up, places to preserve or enhance. And then there's red conversation bubbles, and that's called places to improve or change. And so people can go on, I don't know what the service costs, so we might still be, depending on budgetary stuff, we might still be doing this, using like a big map printout, but the idea is essentially the same. And so people go on and, can add their feedback, and this is open for a number of weeks, so people could go on and click on different areas. So for example, one of the big ideas, let's see.
They don't publish their prices.
Of course not, but I could ask Damascotta if they would be willing to.
Of course,
to help.
that's not a good sign.
So, right, so,
Expensive.
one of the big ideas was expanded water and sewer lines to more areas of town. Another was, instead of granite curb sidewalks on this end of Church Street as planned, how about a gravel multi-use path for pedestrians and bikes? And then they talk about, connecting it from the cemetery or Pleasant Street to, Coastal Rivers Round Top near Route 1B. Another was allow more cannabis dispensaries. Then if you look at like places to improve, so the red conversation bubble, there's, let's see.
And just members of the public put these on?
Yep. More safe sidewalks are needed for healthy walking activities for our aging population as well as young families. Another is turn the parking area into a park, so there's more space to be enjoyed in this beautiful spot. It's one of the best areas in Damascotta, but it's a parking lot. Then some, thumbs up is enhance building codes and zoning regulations along the Route 1B corridor, enhance the character of town rather than allowing it to become any town USA.
That's great.
So it's the same concept, but they did it online using Social Pinpoint,
Yeah.
rather than in a public workshop.
I think
What
that
they-
would be really good because not everyone will come to public.
Exactly, right. So it was kind of the same, in the same vein as the survey, they opened them up around the same time, and so people could do one or both. And then they took that information and then did a series of workshops in the fall around, either a specific chapter, if it was kind of a big topic, like housing or education. And then there was a couple others that were kind of merged together, so like natural resources, the waterfront chapters that had similar themes to them. And they went over the results of the survey and Social Pinpoint responses. So it was maybe a 20-minute presentation from the planning consultant that they engaged to help with their comp plan. And then they divided people up into like roundtable discussions with kind of guided questions. And they would have comp plan members act as facilitators and note takers during those conversations with the guided questions. And then they all came back together as a group to talk through them and see what similar themes came out. So that's another way to do the workshop. It's a little less interactive in terms of like fun and games, but it still allows for dialogue. And it's also responding to data that was collected from the survey, as well as chapter inventory. So, using housing as an example, they had looked at, you know, the housing study we did, the housing data that their housing chapter committee put together, and talked through some of the issues, as well as what the response were in the survey and social pinpoint. And then had these guiding questions to talk about, like, what things they would want to see for the future related to housing. So it helped them then set up their goals and strategies for their comp plan chapter.
That's neat.
Yeah, if we could get that, I feel like that would be ideal,
Yeah.
particularly if folks didn't want to come out to a workshop, they could still put their input on there.
So the guiding questions were generated by the comp plan committee, Emily, based. The guiding questions were generated by the comp plan committee
Yep,
after they reviewed the pinpoint. and
Right.
survey results.
yes,
Oh,
yep.
Okay.
Do you, in your experience, do you think it would be too big of a list of topics if we did waterfront, climate change and natural resources all?
It would depend on how you set up the workshop. I think there may be a way to do it. But you'd want the workshop to be long enough to allow for conversation around all of them, because they are kind of three different topics. Because one is, you know, waterfront in terms of water access and economic development. There's also the waterfront piece that's tied to climate change, but then there's also the broader conversation around climate. So, you know, whether it's, drought caused by changing climate or intense rainfall, impact to infrastructure outside of the waterfront infrastructure. So you would want to allow for that, and then seeing the natural resources is, you know, a conversation about, you know, groundwater, surface waters,
Yeah.
those natural environments. So I think there may be a way to shape it, but you'd want to make the activities, maybe one is tied more to natural resources, another is towards
Yeah.
climate spending, you know, if you're using like the Monopoly one, and then a third would be to the waterfront.
I think you can actually put them in three different segments, like she was saying, like. There's the economic side of things, then there's the public facility side of things, and then there's sort of the natural resource side of things. So you can actually have three different public hearings and address all those three different issues. So
Yeah.
you focus on economic development, and you would have then you have questions in the economic development. You know, forum, maybe asking them about the waterfront, you know, questions about waterfront, then you're talking about facilities, you can still ask them about the waterfront again. But it will be a little bit different, you know, and then same thing again in natural resources, but it'll be a little bit more towards climate change, you know, so you'd still asking the same kind of questions, but you'd be addressing all those issues. The climate change and all those different issues.
Cause I'm just trying to think logistically, I don't wanna put too much into one, but I also wanna take advantage of things that are related. So,
It feels like, I feel like the waterfront, they do all overlap. What were the three categories you were talking about? Public facilities,
economic
economics,
development and natural resources, right?
Yeah, I mean, those are the three chapters,
Yeah.
chapters in
yeah.
the plan.
I think your connections between climate change and natural resources seem very enmeshed to me. The waterfront is almost more toward recreation and economic development or something, I don't know.
But
They're
it's
all,
also, yeah, and this is more, I know you're sitting there, but this is more of a discussion for all of us, so please feel free to.
Thanks, Sarah. I feel like any discussion about the waterfront has got to include climate change and severe weather and,
yeah.
you know,
So
sea
maybe
level
that's all
rise,
that.
because whatever we decide to spend money on the waterfront, we've got to plan ahead 5, 10, 20 years in the future.
Yeah,
With the way that we're seeing, you know, these extreme storms and tides.
yeah,
We can't spend $1 million on something that in 5 years will be washed away.
right. So maybe we should work on tying them together, those three. I mean, they do overlap a lot. I don't know if it's a lot to bite off.
It is.
Cassie's online. Cassie, did you wanna go ahead and speak? Or I was gonna read your comment, but either one.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep.
Fantastic. Hi, everybody. Cassie Rose, the chair of the climate action team. Yes, so climate change is one of these tricky subjects that we definitely can talk about in the context of adapting on the waterfront, but or adapting to extreme heat or more frequent droughts, more severe rainfall. But there's also a lot of aspects where climate and clean energy changes will overlap with economic development, the future of what transportation looks like. You can talk about it, how it overlaps with education or the future of town buildings, how we manage our buildings. So I would, my comment was that I expect climate change would probably come up in multiple workshops. Although it can also certainly overlap very much with the waterfront and natural resources. So I wouldn't necessarily silo it in one workshop, in that it just is unfortunately one of these big subjects that touches on a lot of potential areas of the comprehensive plans.
That's a really good point. I think you, Emily, brought up the issue that in one town, I don't remember which town it was, maybe it was Sarasota, they decided to make climate change sort of the driving framework for their whole comp plan.
Yeah, it was one of them, so it was kind of an overarching theme, that and then, age-friendly community planning were the two that, because it touches on so many chapters, whether it's, you know, transportation, economic development, housing, you know, they're intertwined in all of your inventory chapters.
And I wonder if we have to have, it needs to be a part of every workshop
Yeah, and I wonder,
rather than its own thing.
because I'm thinking of all the different things that were listed, in the resolution.
Municipal resolution.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cause I don't know if this is what you all might be thinking, but I was sort of thinking some of those might be questions that you would wanna get some input on from in this workshop in terms of putting up, like, do you? I don't know what the question would be, but you'd have to, depending on what activity you wanted to do.
Sure.
So I was kind of thinking maybe you could do a bunch of those. Cause they also, a bunch of them also tie into the waterfront, and certainly we could have climate related questions in other workshops. But I don't know, would it still make sense though to do a bulk of those questions in one workshop? No.
Yeah, I mean, people are able to answer multiple questions, you know, handle that sort of thing. They're showing up. I'm sure they're going to be happy to participate.
What's the town resolution, what are you talking about with the town resolution, or you made some reference to?
The municipal resolution.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Meeting, and I don't know what that is. What is that?
I mean, like,
Really,
sorry.
it's just, we, in order to, qualify us to be eligible to apply for the
Oh,
community
okay.
action grants,
Yeah,
we had to cross over a bunch of thresholds and through a bunch of gates.
okay,
Some of them were public meetings, surveys, and also having the town pass a municipal resolution
sort of make a
to
commitment.
align with what we thought the
Okay.
priority should be for this passage.
Great, okay, thank you.
Climate.
Okay, when would make sense in terms of, I know there's some grants due on your end at the end of the month, which is already next week, I guess. But after that, for either committee, are there any other timeline things we should be thinking about in terms of when we would schedule a workshop?
I don't think so. I feel like the sooner the better, but I know we had included some funding in this grant we're applying for that would help fund public engagement and public meetings. So when we get the grant, we'll maybe have a little bit more money for outreach and to help get these meetings off the ground. I'm not sure if Cassie has anything she wants to add.
Yeah, Cassie?
Yeah, I was going to bring up that exact point, that we're trying to build in community engagement into the 2 grants that we are applying for or taking action on at the end of this month. And so I think we would love to make sure that that is useful for both these waterfront resilience projects, but also informing the comprehensive planning process. I think feed two birds with one seed.
And when do either of you know when you'll hear back on those?
So it's not entirely clear on the community action grants. I would expect that we should hear back probably by May. Not entirely positive, but I think they usually try to turn it around within a couple of months. The second grant, Coastal Communities Planning Grant, we just have a letter of intent due at the end of this month, and then the actual grant is due a little bit later. I think Emily might know the exact date. Apologies.
That's okay, Kathy. I agree with your assessment that you probably hear on the community action grants. I would say either mid to end of May, depending on how many they get and have to go through. And then coastal communities is a little bit different this year. They are asking that towns submit a letter of intent, and then they will choose which ones, and you will get a formal invitation of whether to apply or not. So if Wiscasset gets invited to apply, I think the deadline is closer to like Memorial Day. And then it's probably at least a month, 6 weeks before you would hear if you're awarded that too.
Okay. Kathy, did you have another thing to say?
No, apologies. I'll pull my hand down.
That's okay, wasn't sure. So maybe could we do like a tentative late May? And we could always do more than one too. I mean,
I know natural resources won't be ready because the whole past year I've been working on historical archaeological resources. I did that presentation like 2 summers ago. I can look back at that and see what needs to be done, but I think a lot of information about soils and water quality, all that stuff needs to be updated, you know?
right, but I don't think you need to have that done for the workshop.
Okay, that's, yeah, I was just.
Some of that really granular stuff.
Would not be done by end of May, I'm sure, but.
Yeah, I think that's
Just be
okay.
there and collect information and offer what we have.
Yeah. Does that seem? I don't know. Yeah.
I think Aaron might be able to correct me if I'm wrong. I think we might want to wait for the waterfront if we get the grant from the community action grant to have the consultant on board. He's going to be doing that vulnerability and engineering assessment. They would be involved in that feedback. But I would say probably July timeframe might be reasonable.
Yeah,
Okay.
waterfront stuff, I mean, that's part of the grant. We're supposed to be paying them
Okay,
to do some of the community outreach.
okay.
But is that community outreach more tied to the assessment that the engineer will be doing on the waterfront infrastructure? Because I'm wondering if you're trying to do a workshop that's around natural resources, climate stuff, the waterfront generally, which I think the waterfront is more than just the infrastructure down there. It's also like, you know, public access and, you know, White's Island, and there's a lot more to it than that. So I'm wondering if you might not have to tie it with the 2 grant opportunities that the Climate Action Committee has been working so hard to apply for.
I agree with you 100%. That's why I was kind of suggesting that you could break it out into different parts, like public facilities and services is kind of like what you were just talking about, you know, it's like the access thing. And partially, you know, it's like recreational opportunities and things like that. And then natural resources is sort of like, to me, a little bit more like the climate change and a little bit more, that's where my mind goes, but probably not, but, and then and some of the transportation stuff is more like the waterfront, you know, like the fishermen and stuff like that, and boats and things like that. And how they use it, but there's a little bit different aspects of that. And then the economy is also like, you know, maybe, you know, how all that affects the overall economy, you know, so there's a lot of different questions that could be asked out of different sections of that, different sections, you know, like you know, it doesn't have to be all done in one hearing, you know, you can have like one question in each of those different hearings, or unless you wanted to do it all in one big.
Well, so my only question that I think I agree, it might make sense to structure it that way. My only question is, I'm not sure we wanna have 3 separate hearings. Like, I don't know what people's threshold is gonna be for
Yeah.
too many.
And here, the workshop.
Cause you also have to factor in your future land use, you know, and kind of like visioning workshop, which I think some of these, like especially the chapters that you think might not get a lot of people to come out for. You know, you could both add that into, you know, your future land use planning and future visioning workshop.
Yeah.
As opposed to having these separate workshop on, you know, one. So I would consider having. And that's one of the questions I had back to all of you is like, are you envisioning, you know, is it 3 total? And maybe it's 2 that are more targeted in terms of topics. And then your, you know, catch-all is your future land use chapter planning, or are you considering having maybe a series of 4 or 5 and then your future land use? What do you think the public's interest would be in attending a series?
So when we did, Wayne, when we did a comprehensive plan, we actually just had. We broke it out into chapters, but what we did was, it was kind of just something Rand needed. But we did advertise it, but we also invited department heads to come in and like key stakeholders. So like our natural resources, you know, we invited like the land trust and the lake associations and things like that, and like kind of like testify, I guess, but, and talk about it. And then residents were able to sort of say their piece. And then, we took that into like their comments and put it into like our chapters and things. And then eventually we actually developed a draft, and then we then held other public hearings, like more comprehensive public hearings where we invited people to speak, on the topic. But I have to say, I mean, it took us 2 years to do this silly thing, so I don't know if we want to do that for that, but.
That's pretty standard, I think.
So,
Yeah, it takes a while, it's definitely a marathon.
So,
The other idea, as you were kind of talking is. There's also maybe opportunities, I'm thinking Screener Fest could be one of them, is like if you go to where people already are. So kind of like the survey, you're gonna be putting it in libraries at the town office, but if you had like, you know, a booth set up at. Scarecrow Fest or Market Fest or any of the fests. Oh, that's right. You know, you might also be able to get public feedback as people are out and about. And so again, that's another opportunity where you're not necessarily asking people to come out of their way to a workshop, but you're going to them.
They're already out.
that's
Right.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
I noticed, I was amazed that in Bath, they used a Facebook site for their comp plan development. And they, it was dedicated to comprehensive plan, but they got hundreds of comments through that site. And the other option they gave, if you couldn't come to a public meeting, was to email, you know, the comp plan, and they
Well, that's
got
what we
like
did too.
6.
Things like that, that's what we did too. We actually created an email just called Complan, you know, and so people would email us right to that Complan.
First, you need someone to oversee the Facebook site and receive the email. I feel like Sarah's kind of busy right now. I can help with that, but.
In terms of number of workshops, do we feel like 3 or 4 is a manageable number? Like, do you think if you told your neighbors that, they'd, or no, that's way too many?
I think 3.
I think really too. I think that's probably about all people are gonna.
Yeah.
Have the attention span.
So in terms of buckets, you said we really need to do a land use / visioning.
You would wanna do your future land use and visioning as one. But that could also be, you know, if you like the idea of like going where people are, that could be your table set up at, you know, Market Fest. And so you'd have, you know, you could bring your pretzel buckets and your planning bucks and have people do it as a table at those events versus a standardized workshop. Just an idea.
You can even bring the maps.
That too, right.
Art walk would be another.
Yeah.
That's another great idea, because the art walks during the summer.
That's another thing that I remember now, that, you know, remember the comp plan, we also did have things like tables set up at our farmer's market and also the library. And people, they would man it and we just have people like, just listen to what people have to say. And we have these maps, we had somebody writing money in habitat maps.
Yeah, and the community center, you know, yeah.
Okay. Do you think that, Emily, that could see a future land use envisioning could be enhanced by all those other things, or do we,
Well,
or
I
in
think,
place?
well, you might be able to do it in place, you would wanna have someone manning, like the table, for example, so you could ask them like, oh, hey, I saw you put, you know, your stickers here, here, and here, do you wanna tell me a little bit more about that? And be able to capture that additional feedback, so it's not all quantitative, but there is a qualitative, you know, piece to it as well, to say like, oh, why did you spend, you know, $400 out of your $500 on transportation? Tell me what, you know, is it a gateway one thing, or do you want like ferry service to Westport? What's your reasoning? So I think if you're gonna do that, like, you would wanna have people, committee members man the tables in order to get that feedback as well, and then if that works, then I would say that could probably be in place of a standard workshop, because you're still engaging with the public, it's just you're going to them instead of asking them to come to you.
Well, I'm thinking if we could do something like the social pinpoint,
That's another option, yeah.
that together with it, then if people don't happen to go to these events
Yeah.
or whatever, then they can put it on there.
I was just thinking while she was talking about, we can also incentivize it a little bit, like, you know, I was just thinking, you know, we do it at our Fest, you know. I was talking to Steve at, you know, on the candy store.
That's sweet.
Yeah, maybe we can get candy worms, so anybody that fills out does a sort of.
Get some gum worm.
And also we can put their name in around and then.
Yeah, yeah, I think we should definitely do that, also for the survey too,
Yeah. that's
that might be a good incentive, say, if you want, cause there's a way. Yeah, there's one I took recently where you can stay anonymous, and then when you finish, it gives you an optional link to say. Put your name and email address or phone number in there, so you can be entered in the raffle, but you're not compromising your name.
I wonder, Emily, when you talk about replacing a workshop on the future land use plan, it feels like there's a certain amount of sort of public education involved in getting people to talk about the future land use plan, trying to explain what growth areas are and rural areas are. Would we lose all that?
It's possible, and so that's why I feel like if you have someone manning the booth, then you can be there to answer questions,
So
but if
we
you
would-
get like 30 people there at once, then that becomes a little bit harder to talk about, like, this is a growth area, it means this is where we want to direct growth in town, you know, see those parts of town grow, whether it's businesses, new housing, or whatnot,
Yeah.
versus, you know, the rural parts of the community that we would want to preserve and maintain that rural character. So that is a good point, and that you do lose that a little bit depending on, like, if you get a bum rush at
Yeah,
Schooner Fest or
Yeah.
something.
which maybe we wouldn't get, but yeah, I guess we would have to just sort of see what the issues are in our future land use plan that could be complicated for someone to grasp, who would just walk
Right,
up to
yeah.
the table, you know. But that will sort of unfold as we work on the plan, I think.
Could we? So let's say we go with the 3 workshops. What if the first one? I'm now thinking the timing of the education thing, what if the first one was relatively soon and it kicks things off and you have the monopoly money thing, so you can go through all kinds of different things, so sort of a bigger picture. And then you give sort of the intro to the comp plan, because if people haven't been reading the paper or whatever, they might not know exactly what we're doing. And then maybe we sort of go with a version of Erin's structure in terms of that one is then talking about economic development and all the pieces, whether it's waterfront stuff, whether it's related to climate change, whether it's related to downtown, whatever. And then we do another one that's more on like public facilities and public services and that kind of thing. And then what was the third one?
Sort of.
No, I was just,
Natural resources?
yeah, I was just.
Yeah, trying to bucket them, right?
Yeah, but I was just planning on going through each one of these as like a separate hearing. I know we're not doing that.
Yeah. No, I was just trying to think of it, if we've got three, how does it make the most sense to divide things up?
Yeah,
That may, the outcomes of that first one may tell you where the priorities are too, like if there's a heated conversation about housing, what does that look like, or the need for housing, or transportation, education, whatever they are. If, depending on, you know, where people are putting stickies on maps or the guiding questions you come up with, there's a monopoly money example. It may naturally, there may be things that naturally float to the top, they're like, okay, those are
Mhm.
definitely the next two workshops that we're gonna be focusing on.
Well,
I wonder,
housing and economy and transportation are all pretty related, the way I see it.
which ones?
housing, the
Economy
economy.
and transportation. And then so.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you try and group three, it's still kind of tough, just because there's idiosyncrasies to each, so when we're talking transportation, we're talking, you know, pedestrian access, cycling, vehicular transportation, water services, the airport, which there is an economic tilt to some of that, but not all of it.
So what if we did in that first workshop, like I said, do the monopoly money or any other kind of big picture ideas to then get some sort of feedback?
Yeah.
We do it a bit after we get the survey out, so we have some initial responses, because for those who haven't seen the survey, it covers everything fairly generally. It's 28 questions. And then maybe we pick some of what we, and I mean, all the committees in the room, are sort of our burning questions. Like the top couple questions, and we use those as a starting point in that workshop and get feedback to those.
Yeah, that sounds good.
So. And then, like you said, and then that workshop could really tell us, okay, people definitely have a lot more they wanna talk about X.
Right. And I think, going back to your question, Anne, about like trying to do that educational piece, I think this would be a good opportunity where you can talk about like, what is the purpose of the comp plan? What are we trying to, you know, learn from talking with the public? And then, you know, talking about like, what's a growth area versus what's not. Hopefully you could record it so it could go on the town website, but then also there's a potential that like, you could then create like a summary flyer to have, if you do like the idea of like going to meet people where they are. So at these events over the course of the summer, like I think Art Walk's a great example. That information would be available to people that might not attend this first workshop, but that you're starting to get that out there. So if people go, you know, someone comes and then they talk to their neighbor who didn't participate, it's like, oh, we're talking about like where we want development to go and what do we want to maintain rural, and you know, we played this fun Monopoly game, they're gonna be at Art Walk, go try it, you know, at least you're getting the word out a little bit, hopefully.
Yeah, Emily, you're such a good.
Really, I'm really trying to be positive here, kind of planning it, especially like post-COVID, I'm really looking forward to doing this, you know, human being trying to do it on Zoom with.
Yeah, I bet.
Not once, not easy.
So you're saying the first workshop would be overview of the comprehensive planning process and why we're doing it at all?
Yeah.
And then focusing on key burning issues.
Yeah.
Mostly around economic development. or-
No, I mean,
No, not
Okay.
necessarily.
Okay.
Yeah, so doing at least the monopoly money,
Yeah.
if not another thing that gives us some direction.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
then also saying, okay, climate action team, what are your 2 or 3 most important questions that you would love feedback to? Waterfront committee, what are yours? Future of the schools committee, what are yours?
And yeah, good idea. And we'd already have some input from surveys that you pointed out, so.
Right,
That'd
and
be
then,
good,
so I think we can share some of that initial survey response, and then And then also it'll be another touch point for anybody who hasn't taken the survey to say, hey, please do that.
Yeah.
Does that sound doable?
And then,
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna have to dive into everything more, but
yeah. So then based on that,
Here
we'll
we
plan
are.
next workshops.
yeah.
Yeah.
And we can also, and if we also do it that way, then, and I'm thinking like late April, early May, maybe, just to give us some time to put this all together in the survey to get out. And then that also doesn't, that makes it so it doesn't matter about the grants and everything in terms of, you don't have to be ready for a huge one. Okay,
Progress.
And Ellie, would you moderate this?
I can, sure.
See
If- yeah, I feel like maybe, I don't know how others feel, it might be good for Emily to do it because she's not in any position in terms of an elected official or on a committee. She assists a lot of them, but. Okay, so, what do we think about timing? When is school vacation?
I think it's the week of April.
Okay, because I'm assuming we'd wanna avoid that in case people are off doing things.
Well, I do have a question about, obviously, we're a seasonal town, right? Do we want to engage in,
Yeah, so, well, one. That's why we're gonna send the survey far and wide, because I'm hoping even snowbirds will take advantage of it, but we're also now going into transition time. So April might actually be a time where there are more people coming back, I don't know. I mean, summer later, but that's also why I think it's. Why having the presence at events and such would be really helpful, because those will be throughout the year, so hopefully you would catch other people who might not necessarily be. Okay, so what about the week of the 22nd, and do we, would this be better on a weekend afternoon or an evening, or?
We're having Earth Day on April 27th, which is a Saturday.
That's
So,
right.
Yeah,
That's a, the community center's having one.
yeah.
Okay, so we probably shouldn't be around that, because we
No.
don't want people to be.
I wonder if we look at like that first full week in May, the sixth, like, or, you know, that first.
Yeah, we'll look at the
Saturday in
sixth.
May,
Yeah, I would say not on the 4th, I know at least a couple universities have graduations
Oh, that's
on
right.
that day. Maybe the 11th, Saturday,
I mean, what do you guys think about evening
evening
versus
versus
weekend?
Saturday morning or
May.
something, I don't know.
I think you're gonna get more people on the weekend. than
On a weeknight. Okay.
you-
Okay, so why don't we tentatively say May 11th? And we can check town calendars and do a little research to just make sure there aren't any other big events we're not thinking of that are.
so
Yeah.
where would you do it?
I was thinking community center,
Is that when the first workshop?
yes.
So do you need waterfront committees, burning questions by then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm thinking if, well, I mean, if we're nominating Emily.
Right.
then we'll check it out. Yeah, what kind of runway would you like in terms of when you want
So
to?
Emily, I'll help you.
Okay.
Questions and stuff.
Well, first of all, you all need to start eating pretzels, so I have. Too.
Oh, my shoes.
Let's see, I'm free the 11th, I don't see anything on the calendar, so that's fine. I would say if we work backwards, because we would want some time to, like, actually, if we're gonna do like the idea, if you like the idea of the maps, we would wanna get those to the printers. That can be done ahead of time. If you like the idea of like the burning questions on the big sticky posters so people can go and put stickers on, I would say if we could get burning questions by May 3rd. So that's the Friday before, so we could, make the posters, and have them ready to go for the 11th.
Okay. You don't need more time than that?
I don't think so. I'll just block off that week.
So I'm confused. I would thought that at the workshop, burning questions would come up, but you're saying you want.
Well, I think it's probably gonna go both ways, so I think there's, what Sarah's envisioning is like, are there questions that we wanna ask initially that either bubbled up already from the survey results? Or maybe, I know the climate action team had done a great workshop last fall or December-ish timeframe. And so if there's kind of additional questions that weren't asked then, or something that came up naturally during that conversation that you want a follow-up question to, or if the waterfront committee has questions, future of the schools, those are things that maybe we could have as kind of like, here's our burning questions so far that are gonna help us
Sort of
guide.
pumps that would start.
Right.
Okay.
And then in addition, you'd have, your maps where you put stickies on things you like, things you don't, your Monopoly money. And so I think from those activities, there's probably gonna be others that filter to the surface.
Okay.
And then initial results from the survey.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
And I'm happy to facilitate, I'm also wondering if there's, in terms of like the intro to the comp plan process itself, would it be ideal to have a comp plan committee member kind of do that, maybe who's chair, volunteering now? If anybody wants to help.
When do you think we're gonna get the survey out?
Yeah, that's a good question. It should be out for about a month, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean,
Soon.
yeah, yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, are there any other issues except my little things?
No,
Okay, good, so we can, whenever you wanna do it.
Okay.
And look at my stuff, I'll do it.
okay, yeah, so but by the end of the weekend, I would think.
Yeah.
I'm sure we can.
If you can find time.
Yeah.
I'm much more flexible.
Yeah, I know. I'll contact Dwayne about using. Okay, probably the senior center. In terms of putting stuff up on walls and things.
I mean, you could, we also have easels, I have a couple of easels at the office, I think you guys have some here too.
What time and how long?
I think not, I think not, yeah, I think not.
9 till 11.
Yeah, maybe 2 hours.
Okay.
Maybe it won't take a long, or maybe it'll bump up again. I'll be so excited about it.
All right.
9 to 11 on Saturday.
What do you, what's your?
I'm not a morning person, so
I
I think a lot of people aren't on the weekend, that's the day
You
that.
think that's too early?
I think it's too early.
That's well. I was trying to think of something.
Even like 11 to 1, we would have a snack.
I was gonna say, there's a couple of things here that I think you need to look at, is
Yeah.
that it's a Saturday morning, I don't know about kids that, they have sports, I don't know what that's about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think if you started at 9, I know we have no money, but we should really have donuts and coffee.
Absolutely.
Well, I
Yeah.
think we're gonna have snacks. We
Yeah.
could have them eat the pretzels before they.
The other option is you could do like 1 to 3, because you do bring up a good point, like it might be T-ball season and
Yeah.
unless it's
Yeah.
at the community center, so you could do an afternoon.
That's
I
true.
think 1 to 3 is a good.
And it is May, so May mornings are pretty precious.
Yeah.
They are, people like to get outside and get things done in the morning, yeah.
Okay, we'll shoot for 1 to 3 and we'll still have snacks.
Oh, thank
Good.
God.
That's important. That's very important.
Okay, so May 11th, 1 to 3, I'll ask Dwayne if we can use the senior center.
So the burning questions can come from any comp plan committee, like it can be from historic and archaeological resources or anything.
Yeah, and then I think we probably have one more comp plan meeting at least before the workshop, so if we have like 50 burning questions, I think we
Yeah.
want to narrow it
Yeah,
down.
so I was gonna suggest that at our next comp plan meeting in
Yeah.
April, that
Yeah.
we discuss at least the ones we want coming from our.
Yeah, great idea, yeah.
Um,
Or if you wanna discuss them all, I mean, that still gives you a month to have the other committees send you the burning questions, and then you can kind of narrow them all down at your April meeting. That might be better.
Okay, because I was actually gonna suggest that we do the 17th, which is the third Wednesday, if people are available.
April 17th. Yeah.
Okay, so if we could do burning questions by April 17th, then, yeah, and then we'll discuss. Did you get that, Susan? Burning questions by April 17th. Because that's our next meeting, and so we thought then we can gather them all and make sure we don't have a million or whatever.
And these could be questions that people, I mean, they could be questions that comp plan has, but they could also be questions that comp plan wants to get input on.
Well,
Correct,
yeah.
yeah,
About that.
yeah, and I think, and we can, even then, we can look at what's on the survey
Yeah,
so far, because I mean, the first few days you put out the survey are when usually the most people see it anyway, so.
yeah.
So we can talk about that too.
Okay.
If there are any that prompt.
Okay.
Okay, so next meeting will be April 17th, and the big topic will be burning questions, and then just making sure we're all set for the workshop.
So. 20. So you don't have to.
If you want to, sure. That would be great. All right, Erin is going to talk to you. Thank you. Okay. So I think we're in good shape, and I'll get the survey out in the next few days. We'll just get the edits from Ann, and then you all can be on the lookout for it. We'll share far.
That's my test for us.
Yeah, well,
it's turning into that, yeah, okay.
Well, because I want to make sure, like Sherry and I took it. Now you can't, we
but now
can't really take it.
right, so I'll do a whole new.
Can you just
Yeah.
throw out that one?
Okay, thank you all for coming. I hope this is helpful. I think we got somewhere.
Yeah. Or let's not do that just yet. I can have Laura make it, but I also reached out to the contractor